Hello, good afternoon to all our viewers. I would like to welcome you to the fifth online Cambridge Ukrainian Studies conversation of this Easter term 2020. My name is Olenka Pevny, and I'm University Lecturer in Slavonic Studies at the Faculty of Modern and Medieval Languages and Linguistics at the University of Cambridge and the Director of Cambridge Ukrainian Studies. This term, Cambridge Ukrainian Studies has hosted a total of five, well, including this one, five online conversations on the topic of economics or on the topics of economics, education, culture, and politics of Ukraine. And while we will continue to hold online events as opportunities arise during the summer, this is our last online conversation for the Easter term. So before I introduce our very, very special speaker, I would like to thank you, our audience, for your support and involvement in our conversation series. I would also like to acknowledge the tireless work of Andrii Smytsniuk, Cambridge University's language teaching officer in Ukrainian, who is responsible for the organization of this conversation series. The conversations we have shared have not only brought us closer together or together with our colleagues in Ukraine, but also have strengthened relationships with peers in the University of Cambridge. So I especially would like to thank Oleksiy Honcharuk, University Lecturer in Economics, and Olenka, Senior Research Associate in Education, for their support and participation in our efforts. Okay, now to the task at hand. We are extremely honored to be able to conclude our Easter term conversation series by welcoming Oleksiy Honcharuk, Ukraine's Prime Minister, from the 29th of August 2019 to the 4th of March 2020. Much is made of the fact that Prime Minister Honcharuk is the youngest individual ever to head Ukraine's executive branch of government. But today's conversation will focus on the minister's political objectives and his work while in office. Prime Minister Honcharuk completed his studies in law and in governance, respectively, at the Interregional Academy of Personnel Management and at the National Academy of Public Administration. Before becoming Prime Minister, he worked and headed the legal department of several investment companies and served as chairman of a number of NGOs focused on advising investors in Ukraine. He entered politics in 2014 and soon afterwards assumed positions in the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources and in the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. From 2015 to 2019, Prime Minister Honcharuk headed the Better Regulation Delivery Office, an independent analysis center focused on improving business and investment conditions in Ukraine and on promoting dialogue between business and government. In May 2019, he was appointed deputy head of the office of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyi and joined presidential advisory boards focused on reform, economic development, and investment. Shortly thereafter, on the 29th of August, Oleksiy Honcharuk was selected to the position of Prime Minister of Ukraine. He served in this position until the dismissal of his government this past March. Today, we have the opportunity to hear about the victories and trials the Prime Minister faced while in office. So thank you all for joining us. As usual, our conversation will take the format of a 30-minute interview conducted by Andrii Smytsniuk with Prime Minister Honcharuk. After this, we'll open the floor to questions from viewers. So we ask that you submit your questions in written form via the Q&A feature on Zoom. And you can start submitting questions during the interview part of our conversation. So, Prime Minister Honcharuk, I know our viewers join us in welcoming you to our forum. And Andrii, I hand the floor over to you, and I await questions from our audience.
Thank you very much, Olenka, for your introduction. I'm excited about this conversation. I think it will be very interesting and informative. So without further ado, Oleksiy, can you tell us a little bit about the development of your political career? How did your interest in politics begin, and what do you hope to achieve for Ukraine and yourself as a politician?
Thank you, Olenka, for absolutely great introductory speech, and Andrii for the interesting question. Colleagues, friends, nice to meet with you, and it's a great honor and pleasure to speak with you this evening. I'm still in politics. I am in my team. We, of course, will be still focused on transformation of my country. I want and I believe that Ukraine is European and well-civilized democracy, but it's a pity, but we still have post-Soviet institutions here. We have a lot of corruption. We have a very huge influence of some oligarchs. You maybe know this word. And a lot of groups of interest and hidden interests. It's a huge part of our political life. It's a pity, but the fact. When we started working in the government from the start, our main goal, was to transform Ukraine and to create the conditions for the business, first of all, because we have a lot of post-Soviet rules here in a very different spheres. We have absolutely stupid limits about selling the land. First of all, we have no any land market. We have a huge limits in our labor law, for example, and so on and so forth. Absolutely a lot, thousands of different stupid rules from the times of Soviet Union. And to create market economy in Ukraine, it was our main goal, and we pay a lot of attention and efforts to it. Right now, I'm still in the Ukrainian political scene, and I'm a part of political life. I have a lot of friends inside the government and inside the parliament still. Every day I'm trying to help them with some piece of advices, and with some maybe preparation and analytics. And when I was in the government, me and my team, we every day you are under the pressure of day-by-day activities, operational some goals and tasks, and a lot. You have no any time to think about some strategic goals and I don't know, strategic decisions. You have a lack of time. That's why right now I'm trying to work. I'm trying to think and to analyze a lot to prepare some complex document for Ukraine to describe some way which could be used in Ukraine, specifically in Ukraine, to transform our economy, to transform our government, our state into some European, pro-Western models and standards. That's my key activity right now at the moment.
Okay, I understand it. And could you guide us? So, how did you actually become a part of Zelensky's team? What was the story of that? How did you? I mean, because your career was very quickly developing. How did you meet Zelensky in the first place?
3 years before this meeting, I was ahead of the biggest think tank responsible for preparation economic reforms. We was a partner to the government that years after Maidan, after Revolution of Dignity. That's why I have very broad understanding different in different spheres, and I had a team, a ready team, some part of a ready team, which with some number of people who were ready to become ministers. So I had an understanding what should we do. I had some part of a team, and I have a general understanding about some main principles, and I have a needed experience in a public administration. The first stage working with Zelensky was the position of deputy of head of office to the president, and I was in a period of 3 months. I was responsible for economical issues, and every day we spoke with the president, discussed something. We trying to find some decisions together. I shared with him my ideas, my knowledges. Maybe that's why the president, in the end, proposed me to become a head of the government, to create the government. Of course, for sure, it is a question to him, but seems to be I was maybe the best person in his team, in his inside team at that time, for this position.
Okay, and I understand. And speaking of your team, so the cabinet of ministers that you appointed had Zorana Skalecka, who is the Minister of Healthcare, and she was very much perceived as the opponent of the current medical reform, while as far as I know, you were a big supporter of Uliana Soprun, the former Minister of Healthcare, and supporter of reform. So can you explain how did she get into your team, and what is your view of the medical reform? And maybe for some of our viewers that are not familiar at all what medical reform in Ukraine is, could you just shortly give us a brief introduction to it?
About Zariana, she was a person, inside the team, we have the person who is the head of committee in the Verkhovna Rada, in our parliament, responsible for this medical sphere. It's Mikhail Rodnitsky. And he advised me and to the president, Zariana, as a person who can be a minister responsible for this health sphere. I discussed with her ideas and her visions, and of course, I shared with her my general vision. We agreed that we will both support and try to implement to enforce the second stage of medical reform in Ukraine. The sense of this reform, the main idea of this reform, is that in Ukraine we still have post-Soviet system, and all finances, state finances, public finances, we pay to some hospitals, to some medical units, without any accounting and any analysis about efficiency of these items. So we just pay them for the existence. So they exist and we pay. And it's not about efficiency. And the transformation of this approach and the idea to pay for some for concrete patients is the main idea of reform. So the state, the government should pay only for some service, some concrete service, and for some concrete people, not generally to the hospital just because they exist. So that's the main idea. Of course, there are a lot of details, and if you go deeply describing and discussing some concrete points about this reform, we can discuss and we can spend a lot of time. But the general vision will be was supported by me, by minister, and by president. But the devil in the details, and so when you start in this implementation process, of course, a lot of time we had some different positions with the minister in the practice. But we planned to start this reform from 1st of April, and all needed documents, all needed organizational events, and were ready for implementation, for good implementation. Right now, this reform, this second stage already started. And I hope that in a couple of months we will see the first results of it.
Okay, but the current minister now might add a few changes to it. So will it actually look in the future the way superannuation, what specifically is going to change about it? Do you know?
Frankly speaking, I think that right now, it's much more about chaos in the ministry and within the reform. That's why I'm afraid that I can't explain you some concrete ideas. Seems to be they are trying to just to understand who will lose in this reform and pay more money to them. But the general idea of the reform that if you are efficient, you will raise some money. You will have more money. If you are not efficient, if you have no any patience, if you have no any capacity to help people, to serve to people, you will have no any money. And if you will pay all the money to some hospitals, to some medical items, which will lose for sure in the result as a result of this reform. It damages the general idea of this reform. Because if you want to motivate somebody to work better, to show some better results, to be more efficient, you should be honest with your stimulus. And if you in the start tell that, okay, guys, who will be more efficient will raise more money, and then you will pay the same amount to everyone, it will not work. So I'm afraid that I already told that we should wait a couple of months to see the first results. After it, I can comment more about this first stage, but for sure we already have some very good results. First of all, right now we already have general and good statistics about the amounts, about the level, about the concrete numbers of patients, so we already have good statistics in hospitals, in the regions, in some cities, and in some another medical items.
Okay.
Before that, we had no. We will be able to analyze something after some period, and it's maybe the main victory at this stage.
Okay, thank you. And now to focus more on the period when you were Prime Minister, what do you personally think were your three biggest failures and three biggest achievements as a Prime Minister of Ukraine?
You see, we expected that we have no so short period of time. We expected that we will have more time to implement our reforms. If we knew we'd have so little time, so for our discussions would have and some of our solutions would have been different. So the main maybe failure, we didn't understand that we have very and so short period of time. And as a result, of course, we launched a lot of reforms, middle term and long term results. If you understand that you have a very short period of time, you will be focused on some very short, low hanging fruits. Yes, but we were trying to focus on some very important but structural reforms and transformations. And for sure, we still have not as much results as we need, as we were needed to show at some moment. And the second maybe failure, if you are a prime minister, you shouldn't be technocrat. You should be a politician. Personally, I thought that you just can have political leader. This political leader will protect you, and you can be focused on some very technological, I don't know, some operational, some other reforms on the implementation, planning, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work. In Ukraine, for sure, it doesn't work, because all in all, every politician will react on some polls and on some feedback from big groups of interests. And you should be a politician to feel it and I don't know, to understand it as a politician. And you should communicate as a politician if you are a prime minister. In Ukraine, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to be a prime minister if you are not a politician. You should have your own support in the parliament. You should have your own support in the streets, in the regions, in the towns. If you have no any chance to provide reforms. You can, of course, be very quiet prime minister and just, I don't know, following the trends, not trying not to touch any system, and if you choose such kind of approach, such kind of model behavior, you have some chances maybe. But if you want to reform, to change something, you should be a politician, because you should speak with people, and you should react and be oriented on some points in the end of the game. It's about some failures. About achievements, actually, we had a lot of some short-term results. We were focused on anti-corruption activity, because the corruption, from my point of view, is the biggest issue, the biggest problem in the Ukraine. Right now, we seems to be the first government without any corruption in the top level. And it allows us to build the trust with our Western partners. Maybe the main our achievement is this trust. Our Western partners trust us. and foreign investors understood that Ukraine could be a good location, good jurisdiction for investing. Yes, and we introduced a number of some progressive solutions and very ambitious reforms agenda, and everyone were sure that we are really ready to move on with a land reform, with law code changing and liberalization of our law rules, and with so on and so forth. With privatization, we acted, and it was actually maybe the main achievement because we succeed with building some trust with our Western partners. There were a lot of some local victories. We stopped corruption schemes in a huge amount of markets. In gambling markets, for example, we changed management, a dozen state bodies and companies, fired a lot of corruptioners. Digitalization, it was one of our priority, and we created very interesting and very popular right now IT tool to get for the local citizens, to get some number of popular state services. Right now, you can, if you are Ukrainian, you can have your passport, your ID, and your driving license, and all the documents about your car and insurance and so on and so forth in your smartphone, just to put one button. It was the result of our first 3 or 4 months. So a lot of local and some small results and achievements.
Can you say us what were the long-term ones? I know that you were planning to launch a lot more reforms in the future. What were those?
We were focused on land reform, first of all. It is one of the main and most important one in our country. And the second, maybe we were trying to build relations and to get a program with International Monetary Fund. For such kind of countries, for Ukraine, it's very important to have some program with the IMF because it allows us and it makes this attraction of investments of FDIs more easy. It was our main, maybe strategic goal to have this partner and to send a signal to some civilized world to some Western partners, investors, and so on and so forth, that right now in Ukraine you have no any corruption in the top level. And the second, we have a very ambitious reform agenda, and if you will invest in Ukraine, you will win in a short and middle period of time. It was our main idea to make our economy grow.
Okay, and also you were first interviewed as a prime minister. I think you also mentioned that possible tax reform and also kind of change to the employment law. Could you tell us maybe what steps did the government take in this direction?
Tax reform. We started in September. It's a second part of a year, and you can't change tax rules it's absolutely abnormal if you are changing the tax rules in the second part of the year, because business should have some time to prepare for some new rules. You should give him the business to plan and if you want business to be sustainable, you can tell him about some tax rules in some long period of time. So you can't change the tax rules in autumn and trying to implement it immediately or in a couple of months. That's why we were focused in the first couple of months. We were focused on building capacity inside our state tax and customs agencies. We have two different agencies, and we found it. We found two young reformers, young managers, and I decided to give them some time to change, to fire all corruptioners, to change the management, middle management and top management in these agencies, and to restart and change all procedures, simplify procedures, install some IT instruments on tools, and so on and so forth. So the first stage of tax reform were capacity building in our agencies. I thought that it will give us more high quality analytics numbers to model, to create some model of a new tax system. Because if you have no high quality numbers, if you have no any numbers, you should just, you can't plan the transformation of the system. We planned that in spring we will implement the tax reform. We already had the ready concept. The main idea of this concept were to one of the main problem in Ukraine, it is a huge part, that a huge part of our economy in the shadow. And this problem were our main goal. To solve this problem were our main goal. So we were trying to create a level playing field. The same rules for everyone, because it's absolutely needed to have fair competition here. And fair competition, it's very important, of course, condition for market economy. If you have no any fair competition, no fair tax system, it's absolutely impossible to have markets, free markets. We understood it, and we started from this goal. The main idea to get this goal to succeed were to make lower level of our labor taxes, because we have the main problem in our tax system is the labor taxes. Nobody wants to pay labor taxes, and everyone wants to have some as simple system as possible, and as a result, nobody wants to have a legal labor contracts. And a huge amount of our economy in the shadow just because we have absolutely stupid and complicated rules and absolutely unfair tax, labor tax, first of all, pressure. It's not about the fair competition. And it was our main goal in the council. And the second part of this reform were simplification of all taxes administration to make them as simple as possible. This concept were prepared. We already discussed it in the Parliament committee, and we were ready to implement it in this spring, but we had not any chance to do it.
Okay, we're running out of time, but before we switch to the questions from the audience, I want to ask you maybe two last questions. One is, what do you think will be the economic challenges for the government of the current Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, and what are your personal plans for the future? Can we expect you to see you at the presidential or parliamentary elections in the future?
About the main challenges, it's very simple. The main challenges for Ukraine is still corruption and groups of influence, oligarchs, because they are not disappeared, they are still there here. And to deal with these monopolies, to deal with this corruption is a huge and the main challenge, still main challenge for this government. It's a pity, but seems to be many of our initiatives already damaged by the government, and it's a pity, but I don't think that these 3 months were very successful in the case of fighting corruption. Seems to be some ministers already represent some groups of influence inside this government, and it's very pity. I hope that this approach and this, I don't know, not tradition, but these pity facts will be changed in the closest future. About me personally, it's I'm not about some position. I'm not interested in some position. I'm interested in changing Ukraine. Right now, I'm working on some ideas and strategic document with my team, with very good experts and like-minded professionals. I expect that in nearest future we will have a chance to implement it in some case. I don't know what will it be. Will it be new parliamentary election? Will it be more, some changes in the government, which will allow us to have some more influence inside? But Ukraine is a democracy, and it's very good news because you can influence not only not only if you inside the power, but civil society is very strong, and I have some good reputation within the parliament, within the government, and I have enough tools to help the right reforms to be implemented.
Well, let's hope some changes will be implemented for the better. Thank you very much. I think we'll be now switching to the questions from the audience.
Flo, thank you very much for all of that information. And before I start reading the questions from the audience, I'd like to ask maybe what is a very obvious question. So it seems like you had all of these long-term plans. And also, when I speak to people in Ukraine, people talk about the always changing tax rules, that it's impossible to keep up all of the changes and revisions in tax rules. So I'm wondering why the change in government? why is President Zelensky constantly, seems like, constantly changing and dismissing governments when it's consistency that is needed and a time to implement these changes?
I think that the main problem here is that the Ukrainian people wants to have a miracle. They expect a miracle from president. They expect a miracle from all politicians, from MPs, and so on and so forth. That's why it's very high expectations, high level of expectations. And to face this situation, to answer these expectations, you can create every day some quick wins, some quick results, some quick decisions, and so on and so forth. That's why very often we have not enough patience to wait for some results, to wait for some, I don't know, for some transformations. It's very important to sell to our people middle term, some reforms with middle term and long term perspective, long term results. Because majority wants to have immediate results. And if you are not delivering these immediate results, you will lose this support. And you should have a wisdom to wait. My answer that we have no enough wisdom to wait here. Every day, every time we need to change something, to show some reform, to show some results. Sometimes it's not about reform. It's very often not about reform. It's very often about just some changes for some changes. And that's because we need to show something to the people every day, and it's very pity. This game just have no any chance to end if we have no any patient. If my answer is understandable.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to turn to the questions that are coming in from our audience. So our first question is from Alex Foltz, who thanks us for organizing this conversation. And here is the question for you. Could Mr. Honcharuk talk further about his view of a solution to the conflict, or talk at all about the solution to the conflict in Donbass and the occupation of Crimea? Does he believe that the two different views of the peace agreement held by Kyiv and Moscow can ever be negotiated to a conclusion, or will there need to be a new approach developed? And what can the West do to help bring this about in Ukraine?
Thank you for this very, very interesting question. Alex, I don't believe that Moscow have some view. It's not about the view, it's about manipulation. Because the decision and the key from fixing and from ending this and from solution to the conflict in Donbass, not in Kyiv, but in Moscow. They just should move their troops, and this is the only and the one solution to finalize, to finish this conflict. We already have some number of cities which were under the control of Russian forces right now, which right now under the control of our government. We have no any problems there. It's absolutely peaceful cities. Because if you have no any foreign troops in your territory, you will find the common language with your people. Nor Mariupol, nor Slavyansk, nor any another Ukrainian city have no any problems and internal conflicts. Okay, it's not about language. It's not about view and about vision. It's just about geopolitical interests of Russian Federation. It's an empire. It's still an empire. Russian Federation as a state wants to have an influence to trade with its international, I don't know, partners, international opponents, with USA, with China, and so on and so forth. And that's why I don't believe that the solution is because that we have no any solution about Donbass, because we have different views in Kiev and in Moscow. It's not the case. The case is that Moscow will find any reason to save and to keep their troops in our territory. And if we will make some step forward and we will do something, they will find another reason to keep their forces in our territory. It's just a Russian game, and it's not about some, I don't know, conflict. We have no any conflict there. We have absolutely synthetic, absolutely created by Russian forces and Russian special forces, special services conflict in our territory. So this idea to find some common view, some common solution, is a trap created by Moscow. It's absolutely impossible to find some common view with Moscow because they don't want to have to solve this problem.
Thank you for that answer. May I follow up by just asking, are you then saying that this will be a prolonged and constant war without a foreseeable end?
I'm so sorry, it was bad connection. Can you repeat it, please?
Are you then saying that because one side sees a sovereign state, Ukraine, and Moscow will do anything not to acknowledge full sovereignty of Ukraine, that there is no end to the war in sight? Are you saying that there is, how can you negotiate if two sides have such different views of the basic problem?
One more time, it's not a different views.
No, I mean, if the Russian side doesn't want to acknowledge full sovereignty of Ukraine, and Ukraine sees itself as a sovereign state, those are incompatible conversations, right?
I got the question. Look, it's not the problem of Ukraine.
No, I know.
It's not the problem of Ukraine. It's a problem of all civilized world. It's not about Russian and Ukraine's case. It's about, it's a story when one very well-armed country with a huge budget spent on its forces and its technology just can move their troops to the territory of another state, to neighbors, and that's it. That's the story about intervention, about starting a war. And it's a question of breaking a world's general order. It's not about Ukraine. It's about general rules. Can we, as a country, move our troops to the territory of our neighbors? Yes or no? Do we have any useful, any normal tools in a global level to stop such kind of countries, to punish such kind of activities? Do we have? If yes, we should react on it through the sanctions, through some different tools. I believe that we should together find right solutions to create some resistance and to damage enough, to damage back, to punish back enough in such kind of cases. If no, we will have more wars, more deaths in the future. That's it. Because every time we will have very different geopolitical interests between China, USA, I don't know, Russia, many other countries, big countries. We will have a lot of such kind of situations in the future. If we don't want to have wars, to have more deaths, to have more violence, I don't know, in the future, we just should create a normal, adequate tool. Right now, it's a pity, but personally, I think that we have no adequate answer. And I don't speak, maybe you perfectly know about Budapest Memorandum. It's a paper when Ukraine just give to Russia and to other countries all our nuclear weapons. We are a very peaceful country. We don't want to have any war, any conflicts. But right now, we have a situation when the first country in the history of our planet just gave all its weapons and then were attacked by the country which collect all these weapons. And of course, it's not a question of Ukraine. Of course, we can, I don't know, create much more such kind of weapon and trying to solve this problem between Ukraine and Russia. But we have no any solution here. It just, there is no any solution here. And it's a trap if we're speaking about Minsk Memorandum and different views about some implementation of this agreement. It's false. It's just a trap. It's not about Minsk Memorandum and some different ways how to implement it. It's a story when one big country just move their troops and just launched a war with another smallest country. And it's a huge problem and it's a huge challenge for all over the world. I think that we should keep sanctions, make them more stronger, and I believe that the right model should be in the middle term sanctions. What I mean, we should create very clear roadmap and give some time for some concrete steps to Russia. You should move your troops from Crimea till the date. If no, you will have this. If no, you will have this. If no, you will have this. And every step could be more damaging to this kind of country. If we will have such kind of roadmap, we will solve the problem. If we don't want to solve the problem, but just want to, I don't know, keep some good face, be in a good face, and we will have more wars and more deaths in the future.
Thank you very much. Our next question is from Lisa Zhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
How would you estimate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of Ukraine?
The main impact to the economy of Ukraine has not nor COVID-19, but lockdown. The main damage to our economy makes it's a result of our lockdown policy, quarantine policy. I don't think it was a very good idea to provide and to launch such strong lockdown in Ukraine. But right now, seems to be we will lose from 5 till 8% GDP per year as a result of this lockdown. And it's only the start of the story. Because these days, we already see that after people, after the canceling, and I don't know how it calls, after last a couple of weeks, when this lockdown makes more soft, already more soft, people almost not following these limited rules. And seems to be we will have in the nearest future, in nearest days, we will have the second wave, or maybe it's just the first wave, I don't know. And the number of COVID patients right now is rising. So I expect that this lockdown could become more stronger in the nearest future. So I expect that the impact and damage to our economy could be much bigger than 5-8% GDP. I think we can lose 8-10, maybe more percent GDP. But what's much more important, that I have a huge amount of people who already lost their jobs. And from my point of view, to save jobs, it should be the main point, main goal for our government. But seems to be, but right now, it's a pity, but I think that we have no any adequate state policy to save the jobs in Ukraine. But we'll see.
Okay, I will thank you, and I am going to ask the next question. President Zelensky, this is from Serhiy Lesik, and the question is, President Zelensky talks about kadrovy volod in government management, and everyone can see that most positions have been filled by notorious characters from Yanukovych's times. How do you think this is solved?
I believe that you should trust to the people. If you have the minister, for example, with a good reputation, with not bad results, with already existing teams, you just should give him a chance to show some results. You should give him some time. And if every day you will change the tasks, you will change your opinion, you will interrupt him in his activities, you will influence to him to some concrete cases or in general. If you will tell him that, okay, I will fire you in 2 weeks if you will not give me some results. This approach, in general, it's absolutely manual approach for the government. If you will use this approach, you will lose, because any adequate, any normal, any high professional person will not go and will not be play in this game. It's absolutely impossible to find high professional with a good reputation who will be ready to work as a minister, as a part of a government in Ukraine, because it's about low salary, it's about a huge pressure from the media, from the social networks, from the MPs, and so on and so forth. And it's very hard and in Ukraine not very honored job. That's why for sure we will have kadrovy golod, lack of normal people and high professionals. If President Zelensky will keep this approach he uses right now. It's absolutely impossible to involve normal people in these roles. It's the first part of my answer. And the second, you see, Ukraine is not very capable state, actually. We have very weak institutions. And most of them are still post-Soviet institutions with all these traditions. And it means that if you want to change the system, you should find persons with absolutely another mindset and values. Because only the person with another mindset and another values can change the system. And we have no enough, actually we have almost no people with normal values, with normal skills, and with enough experience. Because you just have no normal and honest prime ministers, for example, because almost all of them were corrupted. Where can you find very well experienced, without connections with oligarchs, with good reputation prime minister, for example, or ministers, if almost all of them in the past were representatives by some oligarchs or some group of influence? It's just impossible. You just can't find such kind of people. So to solve this problem, we should prepare such kind of people. We should invest in them. We should help them. We should support them. We should give them a chance and some time to succeed. If no, we will change the ministers every month, and we will tell to everyone about kadrovy golod in Ukraine.
Thank you. I have many questions for you, and we will not be able to get to all of them because we've already run out of time. So I will ask two questions, and I apologize to anyone who sent in questions. So there are quite a number of questions about culture. So I will ask one question that is broader and more general, and this question comes from Oleksiy Honcharuk, and here it goes. Dear Mr. Honcharuk, please outline the cultural policies of your government and the recommendation of the current government in view of the ongoing crisis in Ukraine's culture sector. Why is culture always Ukraine's last priority when all of Ukraine's allies and enemies appear to be emphasizing the role of culture in promoting their interests globally?
It's a very important question. In our government, culture wasn't at the last place. If you will open our government program, our basic document, you will see that culture is third or fourth article in this document. We understood that culture is very important. That's why the minister of responsible for the culture, Mr. Volodymyr, was very focused on this very important topic. The culture system in Ukraine had very post-Soviet system of spending public money, public funds, and as like in medical system, we as a government paid to some cultural items, to the theaters, cinemas, and so on and so forth, clubs, just for existing. So we have some culture, I don't know, point, unit, and we should pay it. And the transformation of this financial system were our priority. I'm afraid that we have not enough time to describe it in more details, but we can contact with you, and I will try to describe it in a details, maybe or personally or in some another way. Actually, Olenka and Andrii, maybe we will make and we will have another and second, maybe second part of our election or interview in some another day. I'm absolutely ready to continue this work. If I may, I should run, but I want to thank you for this work. And Andrii, maybe can we discuss the next step, maybe the next point and the next chance to speak with your auditors. Thank you very much, friends, and for this great event.
Thank you very much.
That will be excellent.
Bye.
Bye.